All right, so I'm back. So I've added in my other payment method. And in fact, I went ahead and finished 8, but I'll talk to you about it. So in the field set with the payment method, that's what I had. I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and the name. I knew this. I knew I was doing something wrong, having Bill so many times. But I have the name of these radio buttons must be the same in order for you to be able to, in order for it to associate that only one radio button can be clicked at a time. And that's how radio buttons work. If instead you wanted somebody to be able to choose more than one, then you would use checkboxes. But radio buttons should have in its own group, should have a common name. So I changed the name of that first radio button to payment. The ID and value are both still Bill. The name of the second radio button is the same as the other one because, again, I want them to be grouped. And their ID and value are different than the first one. That's how we identify that there are different radio buttons, but they're in the same group. And then there's a label for that. So that's what I did to complete my radio button or my radio buttons. Now I have 2 buttons. And then I went on, excuse me, at the bottom of, or in 8, and it says adjust the CSS so the buttons are side by side. And then it gave you a hint of how to do that. So I went ahead and just did exactly what it told me to do and didn't have any problems with it. So I set the ID of payment on the field set itself. And instead, you could set an ID on or not an ID, class on those 2 inputs and a class on those 2 labels if you wanted to identify them that way. But it makes just as much sense to set the ID at the field set level so that you can then have kind of a reasonable way to identify them or to select them in your CSS without having kind of ridiculous paths that it's like, the 4th field set or something. So over here in the CSS is where I added in, excuse me, where I added in the code that it told me to, or the CSS that it told me to. So in my element with ID of payment, we're going to set on the label that there'll be no float, and also on the inputs inside the payment. I just set the width to auto and the margin left to 3em, again, just as it said in the textbook. Saved that, and it does, in fact, look exactly like we expected. It told us it would. So that worked perfectly fine. Moving on, add the credit card information field set. So we have one of those drop-down boxes again, and then a card number field, and then again, more lists, or 2 more drop-down lists that we can do. Excuse me. And then gives us some formatting for that as well. So I'm going to start working on that, except I'm going to get rid of some of these things that I have open and just be working here. So I already have one field set up here. I'm sorry, one drop-down box here that maybe I'll go ahead and use. But before I do that, I need to, between my payment field set and my buttons field set, I need to add in another field set for my credit card information. And again, I'll go ahead and close it while I'm at it. And then I'll also give myself a legend. Oops. Legend, and that legend needs to say credit card information. And then I'll close my legend. And yeah, now here I think I'm going to go ahead and take this option up here, the select box up here, and copy and paste it. So now in my card type, you know what, let's go ahead and change that first. Oh, I didn't bring my label with me. Let's go get the label too. Okay, and there I want this to say card type. And so of course I'm going to change card type there. I'm going to change name and its ID. And in here I will have, it tells me Visa, MasterCard, and whatever. And I'll change that to V and M and D, and that should be fine. The card number that just has a label and a text. I'm also going to fix my alignment as I'm going along. So again, I'm just copying and pasting some things that I already have, and will make it easier to not have to type quite so much. You certainly can continue to type or can type it all if you want to, but I prefer not to most of the time. Bring this down, and in my label, I don't want to say number of tickets. I want to say card number. And then I'll change that to also be card number. And there's no reason that has to be an underscore. It could be an underscore. You could use camel case. You could use a dash. Really, all of those are acceptable in HTML as long as I'm consistent. So if I use card underscore number above, I need to use card underscore number here, and vice versa, of course. Number, and I want the placeholder to say 16 digits. Okay, and I think that's fine, except in this case, I actually don't want this one to be required. Because if above they click bill me, then they won't be entering card information. So be sure you're checking that sort of thing as well. So now I have a card number. I have my input. I think I did that correctly. And now I want two more options. Excuse me, two more select boxes. So I'll go ahead and grab those, or grab a copy of that one. And so now I'm going to have, here I'm actually only going to have one label for both of those. Lowercase, expiration date. And another select box under it. Anybody notice something that needs to be changed here or needs to be removed, I guess, from above? What's going to happen with this break? And I know that I haven't adjusted it yet, so let's just leave it there for a second though. Save it, and let's go look at our form. So we're adding this in, but as long as after this first box, I have a break, then that's going to give me a hard line break and take the next drop-down box down to the next line. Let's get rid of that break, save, and see what happens instead. Well, nothing. I'll have to fix that in a little bit then. But I did at least get rid of that break, right? Okay. We'll change the size on the CSS in a little bit so that you can see both of them up at the same on the same line. But now I'm going to go through and I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop this video for a little bit and go ahead and finish adding in all of these options. So I'm just changing what I've changed already on drop-down boxes for the name, the ID, and all of the options that are provided for both of these boxes. And we'll come back and format the lists and test and validate. And that should be fine. Thank you.